Welcome back to the Press Club. Let's shift our focus to editorial rather than a news story. We do occasionally touch on the editorials in the papers. Today's editorial in the Voice newspaper talks about the health sector and the fact that the St. Lucia Labour Party government has been met with derision by many who see it as an admission of failure, especially over the past 5 years, talking about statements made on the election platforms recently by the SLP, suggesting that healthcare is going to be one of their priorities. And the editorial in The Voice is asking, if that is the case, then how many other priorities or how many other issues or segments of the economy are competing for number one priority? Job creation, you have health, you have crime and security. And it goes on to talk about the fact that the health sector is not where it ought to be, that the government has failed in delivering some of the promises as far as improvements in the health sector for the last 5 years, and basically suggesting that it has no confidence of the SLP's ability to deliver, if re-elected, over the next 5 years. To my mind, a lot of what is said there, like a lot of other stuff that we hear, a lot of other comments that we hear on talk shows and in editorials and other commentaries, is leveling blame at the government for what we as individuals ought to take responsibility for. It goes on to talk about the incidence of non-communicable diseases and that sort of thing. You know, the need for the government to spend more money and more energy in prevention, you know, as opposed to dealing with some of the issues that it is wrestling with the health sector. We know that the National Hospital has been renamed. We're preparing for the official commissioning. We know that St. Jude's, that project is underway as well. Once the National Hospital or the complex is commissioned, then you will have the Victoria Hospital transitioned into a major polyclinic. We know the issues that we wrestle with as far as diabetes and kidney disease and that sort of thing. But to my mind, you know, well, they're correct up to a point as far as the need for prevention. But individual St. Lucians have to take responsibility for their own health. And bearing in mind that there are issues as far as, you know, poverty and our ability to eat well, you know, and to exercise. But I think there's a lot of, there's some accuracy in it, but I think too much is being expected of the government.
Well, this is not unexpected. You talked about me being a man of many shades. I think by the end of this show, we'll better understand. The Voice, this particular Voice editorial, like an increasing number these days, is a direct response to the Prime Minister's call or his statement that if re-elected, his priority of his next SLP administration will be health. And he said so on an election campaign platform as part of his party's campaign. And the Voice editorial today is a direct response to that statement, even though, you know, the Voice may or may not admit that. The fact is that let's look at the reality. The fact that St. Lucia is so far, or was the last country to be visited by Zika in the region, is not something that we can boil down to being the result of government policy, but it suggests to me that people have been listening to the warnings and to the public health alerts that are being put out and that have always been put out since last year, insofar as to keep Zika at bay. We look at the whole question of diabetes. World Health Organization indicated that its emphasis for this year should be on diabetes, and St. Lucia still being the diabetic capital of the world per head of population, which we have been since 2006, one would have expected that there would have been more discussion in the media, and maybe a paragraph in the Voice editorial this weekend looking at what are we in the media doing to push and promote the whole need for there to be a more holistic approach to the diabetes problem. Because today not only have the number of diabetics increased by almost 4 times since 1980, there are 422 million diabetics on earth, including every single one in St. Lucia. More limbs, more people are losing legs, toes, etc. to diabetes in St. Lucia. We still don't have enough diabetes dialysis machines. The cooperative, St. Lucia Civil Service Cooperative Credit Union made 2 machines available. And it made headline news. That's just 2 machines. But each cost $90,000. And in order to access a machine, somebody has to die.
But don't forget the cost of the dialysis for the individual, and that has to be subsidized by the government. And what that means is all of us are paying for the dialysis.
Paying for it, you know. So I'm saying it is
a huge burden on the economy.
When we look at you know, and then when the reason why I'm saying that the Voice editorial is a response to the Prime Minister's statement is because it in effect says, you know, it brings in the 5 years. It unfairly measures what has been delivered insofar as this government, when it comes to health, in the past 5 years, vis-a-vis in the previous 5 years. The health is, again, like security, is an issue that ought not to be politicized. You know, and unfortunately, it is being politicized here, because what you have, unfortunately, is the Voice saying, don't vote for the Labour Party, because in the past 5 years, health has not been what it promised during its campaign. Or it could be saying, listen, if you were to be advised by us, we would advise you not to accept, you know, that the Labour Party has delivered what it promised insofar as health is concerned.
I wouldn't go that far, but my issue is it's a little misguided, you know. If we had to be honest, I mean, we've heard Philip Lacarbonier talk about the security. People have been clamoring. Let's do something about the crime situation. Let's do something about the number of rapes. As he quite rightly said, if government decides, okay, we're going to pump more money into the police, we're going to pump more money into training the police, equipping the police.
It has to come from somewhere.
Exactly, it has to come from somewhere. And are you willing now to go throw your support behind the government and these initiatives to improve and to address security and your concerns that you're expressing, and recognize that it's probably going to mean that some other areas are going to suffer, whether it's education, it's infrastructure, not having nice roads that you want, not having, you know, you have to take that into consideration. The conditions that the government came in, or the state of the economy that the government inherited, the issues that have to be dealt with. As it quite rightly asked, how many priorities are you going to have? Limited funds have to be assigned to different portfolios and areas, including health, crime and security, education, infrastructure, and the like. But at what point do we as individuals take responsibility for our own health? You know, you can't blame the government for everything.
We have about 400 nurses, you know, and dozens of doctors who have graduated from Cuba. In the past 5 years, they've been returning home every year, in preparation for, because that was a forward-looking investment in the fact that we're going to have a new national hospital, a new hospital for the south. You know, the Soufrière hospital has been fixed. Like you said, the Victoria hospital is going to be transformed into a polyclinic, and health centers. A health center has been rebuilt in Dennery. Health centers, you know, have been relocated in Babono. So it's not like nothing has been happening to the physical structure. But then you have the dozens of doctors and the hundreds of nurses who are trained, who are qualified, and who are not necessarily being subsidized for being out of work, but who are now being parceled out because they are successfully applying for jobs in other OECS and CARICOM territories. Trinidad sent down its permanent secretary in the Ministry of Health and an entire delegation to interview those trained St. Lucian doctors and nurses, particularly and especially those who trained in Cuba. So that has to be taken into consideration when we're looking at our health
Absolutely,
fare.
yeah.
So health is not just the plant. Like I said, I would like us in the media to do more, to pay more attention to what diabetes means to us, and avoid seeing diabetes only from the standpoint that Jufali has promised a research center, and questioning whether it's going to be delivered or not. We got to demand is that research center be delivered. We got to ask, when is it going to happen? We've got to recognize what it would mean for St. Lucia as the diabetic capital of the world to be located here, what it would mean for the rest of the Caribbean, because it would be the only diabetic center in the entire region which would be located here. And like I keep saying, rather than feeling ashamed about the fact that each of every one of us in St. Lucia either has a relative or knows somebody who is diabetic, it means that the thing is home. We are not just independent observers in the media. We are living in the diabetic capital of the world. Each of us knows somebody or is related to somebody who is diabetic, and therefore we have a personal and a national responsibility to stop treating the diabetic and diabetes problem as a negative factor. We didn't wish it on ourselves. We didn't pray for it. We didn't do it to ourselves, but we have it. So my thing about it is that we need to look at it the other way around and say to the World Health Organization, to PAHO, and to all of the health entities around the world, we in St. Lucia, we are the diabetic capital of the world, but when it comes to numbers, the number of people to be dealt with is minuscule when you look at the entire budget of the WHO. United States is asking for $500 and something million to fight Zika. Okay, we can make a total sum and come up with an estimate figure of what it will take to address and reverse diabetes in St. Lucia. Let's come up with that figure, put it to the international organizations, tell our ambassadors and them, go out there and get that support so that we make St. Lucia, yes, the diabetic capital of the world, but where a small island with few people compared to the world has shown the rest of the world that the WHO's call in 2016 for it to be dedicated as the year against diabetes. Let's use the rest of that year between now and the next World Health Day to drive that, to drive that effort to tell the world we are the diabetic capital. Look at us, take care of us, and let us show you all that it can be done. I think, folks, it can be done. It really, really can be done.
I think we also have a very important role to play, not just the government in the prevention aspect of things, by educating our listeners, our viewers, our readers about diabetes, not just about diabetes, but the implications that we touched on earlier. And I think part of the problem is that a lot of the media people don't understand the far-reaching implications of, one case of diabetes, the impact on the family, the community, the entire country, the health sector, the economy, the Ministry of Finance and the coffers, government's coffers. But we're due for a break. We'll take the break. When we come back, I want to touch on the media. The media has been as much in the news as reporting the news over the last couple of weeks, and I want us to touch on that when we come back. You're watching The Press Club.